අලුතෙන් SLT Mobitel Home 4G LTE connection ගන්නාට වටිනා tab computer සහ data දීමනා. අලුතෙන් SLT Mobitel Home 4G LTE connection ගන්නාට වටිනා tab computer සහ data දීමනා.
පැස් සබන් බිලිඳ සම්ට විශේෂයෙන්ම නිෂ්පාදිතයි. SLS ප්‍රමිතිසාධකය සහිතයි.
In your headlines tonight, through the hills, the railways launches an upgraded tourist experience on the Kandy-Alla train ride.
It's a really nice trip with a really modern train. The views are amazing.
Sri Lankan Railways has done a very good job and they should promote it more.
Doing it right, the tourism secretary says controversial Marvella Beach construction will go ahead sustainably.
We don't have any objection, but the thing is, we have objected to if there are any disruptions for the tourism industry, then we'll deeply consider it.
The clock is ticking. Health Ministry says plans in place for the April 30th booster deadline.
Still, there is nearly 7 million people has to take the third booster dose. You need full vaccination to enter into the public places.
Off the roads, the continuing diesel shortage is set to see only 25% of private buses running tomorrow. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Sunday the 6th of March 2022.
100ක් දක්වා ඉසොරි නැති 100ක් සුසිනිඳු කෙස් කලමක් ලබා දේ. Dove Anti-Dandruff.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome to tonight's edition of AdaDerana English, your primetime news. With tourist arrivals continuing to look promising in the months ahead, one of the most sought-after tourist journeys through the country's picturesque hills have been given a whole new dimension. Now, a new luxury train service named the Alla Odyssey, targeting both local and foreign tourists, has been launched from Kandy to Alla and looks to be giving tourists looking to post their iconic social media photographs a bit of a boost. The new train service will operate on a daily basis and is expected to provide a better experience for tourists looking to take in the views of some of the most sought-after tourist attractions between Alla and Kandy. Now, the Tourism Ministry says that other similar train services are being planned ahead.
With zero restrictions on inbound travel, tourists now have the ability to visit Sri Lanka and enjoy its sights and sounds like they used to do before the COVID-19 pandemic. With the industry targeting 1.1 million tourist arrivals this year, various promotional efforts have been planned for implementation by the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, including a global marketing campaign as well. In this backdrop, the Sri Lanka Railways Department has extended its own support towards efforts to enhance Sri Lanka's attractions for the benefit of local and foreign travellers using its service. A luxury train service named the Alla Odyssey that operates from Kandy to Alla was launched by the Sri Lanka Railways yesterday under the patronage of Minister of Transport Dilum Amanugama. The event was also attended by representatives of the Sri Lanka Association of Inbound Tour Operators. According to the Sri Lanka Railways, the train will begin its journey from the Kandy railway station at 7 a.m. and is expected to arrive at Alla at 1:49 p.m. The train will also travel up to the Damodara Loop, passing the Nine Arches Bridge, and will return to Alla again at 3:40 p.m. Finally, the train will arrive back in Kandy to finish its journey for the day at 9:35 p.m. after leaving Alla at 3:40 p.m. The new train service is expected to operate on a daily basis. The objective of this initiative is to provide a novel experience to tourists visiting Alla and Kandy, which are two of the country's most visited tourism hotspots. With this initiative, both local and foreign tourists now have the ability to witness some of the most photographed sights along the journey, such as St. Clair's Falls, the picturesque Idalgasinna railway station, the world-famous Nine Arches Bridge, and the Damodara rail loop in the comfort of brand-new railway carriages.
It's a really nice trip with a really modern train. The views are amazing. It will be definitely good for Sri Lankan tourism and for everyone that wants to enjoy this experience.
I think the Sri Lankan Railways has done a very good job and they should promote it more so more people can enjoy this. We're having a really good time.
This is a wonderful trip, great experience. It's quite refreshing. I hope it continues and attracts more tourists. Great initiative, good job.
More information on ticket prices and online reservations can be found on www.seatreservation.railway.gov.lk. According to Minister of Transport Derana English, the Railways Department is planning to implement more special train services for tourists, given its popularity among travellers as a preferred mode of exploring the island.
Regional tourism associations have raised major concerns over the construction of the Mavella fishing anchorage, claiming that the project could seriously affect what is considered one of the 10 best beaches in Sri Lanka. However, speaking to AdaDerana English News today, Secretary to the Ministry of Tourism S. Hettiarachchi stated that officials are set to visit the site, adding that the ministry has no objection to its construction as long as it does not affect the tourism industry.
Located down south, Mavella Beach in Tangol is considered as one of the finest tourist destinations for beach lovers. Proving the fact, travel magazine Lonely Planet in a recent announcement placed Mavella Beach within the top 10 beaches in Sri Lanka, saying that the beach possesses a splendid surrounding that comprises boutique hotels, villas and simple bungalows. But now, a new concern associated with the beach has grown due to plans for fishing anchorage to be constructed in the location. The anchorage began its construction on the 6th of December 2020 and is expected to comprise of 3 breakwaters. Although the anchorage is set to provide a secure livelihood for fishing community by providing facilities for 350 fiberglass vessels as well as the multi-day fishing vessels, the local tourism associations say that this project could severely impact the natural beauty of the Mavella Beach. They add that the project is not planned properly and lacks in the environmental impact assessment. Further, they also say that such unplanned constructions can give the wrong message to the world that Sri Lanka does not adhere to sustainable tourism practices. They have also called on authorities to protect the beaches from such constructions. Since then, the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority too has raised their concerns, and with this regard, we contacted the Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism, S. Hettiarachchi, to obtain his view.
As a tourism ministry, we want to protect it. And recently, we have received several objection letters from various tourist agencies. We had several discussions with ministry officials and NARA and Department of Fisheries regarding not only Mavella Beach, but other beaches as well. So they are under ADB, Asian Development Assistance. They are going to construct some fisheries, harbours and anchorage points. So our view as a tourism ministry, we don't have any objections, but the thing is, we have objected to if there are any disruptions for the tourism industry, then we will deeply consider it. So that we request the authorities have a discussion with both parties and have some kind of amicable solution for that. But anyway, next week, DG of Coast Conservation Department is going to visit down south and deeply look into these matters during his visit. Probably within the next Monday starting week, he will visit there. Then after that, his observation, we can have some kind of discussion with relevant authorities.
Despite the initiative taken by the Sri Lanka Transport Board to provide diesel to private buses and tourist buses through their 45 island-wide depots, private bus owners are calling the project a failure as only 2 depots were able to issue them with their diesel needs. As such, they warned that under these circumstances, only 25% of their buses will be able to run from tomorrow.
A shortage of fuel in the country has seen long queues outside filling stations across the country. Sri Lanka received 2 oil tankers on the 2nd and the 4th of this month, carrying consignments of auto diesel and super diesel. The Ministry of Power said today that currently from 37,000 metric tons of diesel that was aboard the vessel that arrived on the 2nd of this month, only 7,000 metric tons of super diesel remains to be unloaded. In addition, the ministry stated that 28,300 metric tons of auto diesel that was aboard the ship that arrived in the country on the 4th is currently being unloaded. Further, the ministry added that 2 more oil tankers are due to arrive in the country later this week. In the meantime, the Sri Lanka Transport Board yesterday launched a program to make diesel available for private buses and tourist buses at 45 depots located across the island. However, despite this initiative, private bus owners have called the program a failure as they were only able to obtain diesel at 2 SLTB bus depots. As such, they state that due to the current situation, only 25% of their buses will be able to operate from tomorrow. Further, the shortage of fuel in the country has also had a direct impact on the ability of the Ceylon Electricity Board to provide power to the country as well. In the past week, scheduled power cuts had been implemented across the country due to the lack of furnace oil required for power stations. In this regard, the Ministry of Power stated that 30,000 metric tons of furnace oil required for power stations will arrive in the country tomorrow. The CEB further announced that measures have been taken to issue 4,000 metric tons of diesel to the Kalanithisa power plant for its operations. Meanwhile, the Public Utilities Commission announced today that 7-hour power cuts will take place in areas coming under groups E and F. The power interruptions will take place in 2 stages with 5 hours during the day and 2 hours in the night. The Commission further stated that areas P, Q, R, S, T, U, V and W will undergo just 3-hour power cuts tomorrow between 9 am and 9 pm. Power cuts for the 8 groups will be carried out as 2 hours in the morning and 1 hour in the night.
Director General of Health Services Dr. Asela Gunawardena urged the 7 million people who are yet to receive their boosters and those with incomplete 2 vaccine dose regimes to get them before the end of April. Now, he said that unless the public are completely vaccinated with the booster as well, they may not be able to visit public places after the 30th of April without an updated vaccination regime.
Sri Lanka is currently reaping the benefits of a successful vaccination program. So far, 16,921,171 people have been inoculated with the first dose, while 14,205,539 have completed the 2-dose regime. In addition, the booster has been rolled out to 7,306,152, a figure which health officials believe isn't as nearly as enough as it should be since the booster rollout began in November last year. For people who are yet to get the booster and complete the 2-dose regime, the clock is ticking. This is because health officials made it clear last month that the ability to freely visit public spaces will be at risk for those who are yet to get all 3 jabs. That is, unless they do so before the 30th of April. Health officials announced that the move was taken in order to prevent unnecessary deaths that had taken place in the country due to the Omicron variant. The Ministry of Health stated that a majority of those who had died from COVID last month were reported from among those who had not received the booster and those who had not completed the 2-dose regime. According to the Director General of Health Services, 7 million people are yet to get the booster dose. Minister of Health Kelly Ramukwala stated that even though people have a choice whether to get vaccinated or not, that right cannot supersede the health and safety of the general public. As such, Director General of Health Services Dr. Asela Gunawardena explained the measures that are to be put in place to verify the fully vaccinated status after the 30th of April deadline.
From 30th of April, you need full vaccination in the first 2 doses plus the 3rd dose to enter into the public places. So the public places will be defined and will be informed to the general public in near future. And once we inform for verification of these fully vaccination status, we are developing an app at the moment, and we have developed a self-generated SMS also, and we have piloted it and it is working very well, and all these things were notified to the general public in near future. Still, there is about nearly 7 million people has to take the 3rd booster dose. So please take this booster dose. There are enough research evidence in the developed countries. The 3rd booster dose has prevented a lot of unnecessary deaths. So our earnest request is to get the booster dose as quickly as possible.
And we'll return with more news on the other side of this break. To stay with us.
Big 3.
The special police unit set up last year to target the illegal assets of drug racketeers in Sri Lanka has managed to confiscate funds and other assets amounting to 780 million rupees to date. This was revealed by the police media spokesperson, who noted that the illegal assets and property investigation unit is currently probing 1,100 individuals in connection with drug-related assets.
Last year, after several high-profile drug racketing cases were uncovered, authorities were finally shown the staggering extent of the drug profits earned by the drug kingpins of Sri Lanka. Following this, the Sri Lanka police set up a new arm called the Legal Assets and Property Investigation Unit, whose task is to probe and seize assets purchased using funds earned through illegal means. Accordingly, since its setting up in July last year, the unit has been successful in detecting and confiscating a massive 780 million rupees in illegal assets to date. Announcing this, police spokesperson Senior DIG Ajit Rohana stated that a total of 1,100 individuals were being investigated by the division for illegally earned funds, and so far 21 have been arrested. He added that the cases include around 325 drug-related investigations that are currently ongoing, and so far the unit has filed action under the Money Laundering Act. He also revealed that suspects arrested by the unit will be taken action under the Dangerous Drugs Ordinance for possession and trafficking of narcotics as well.
Schools island-wide that were closed for the advanced level examination will resume from tomorrow. The Ministry of Education announced that it will be up to principals of relevant schools to decide on the number of students that can attend tomorrow. Meanwhile, school van drivers have raised concerns on student transportation due to the diesel shortage.
For 1 month, schools island-wide were closed down due to the advanced level examinations, which commenced from the 7th of last month. And with the ending of exams, all schools are set to resume normal activities once again from tomorrow. The Ministry of Education states that the principals of the schools have been given permission to decide on the number of students who can attend school in groups. The ministry added that students will have to attend in groups due to the prevailing COVID situation. As such, the ministry says measures should be taken to bring back students to schools with more than 20 classrooms. Further, classes must be conducted for students in 3 groups if there are more than 40 students. Meanwhile, the examinations department stated that the 36 schools that were used as centres to host the advanced level exams will remain closed until the 12th of March. From the 36 schools that were used as exam centres, 29 will be closed partially. In the meantime, school van drivers have said that due to the shortage of diesel across the country, there might be issues in transporting students and teachers to schools from tomorrow.
Veteran comedian Berti Gunatilaka, who entertained generations of Sri Lankans through his hilarious comedy sketches on national television, has passed away at the age of 98. Having begun his comedy career in 1954, he gained widespread fame through his many comedic roles alongside Annesley Dias and Samuel Rodrigo on their program Vinoda Samaya.
Veteran cinema and television actor and comedian Berti Gunatilaka passed away this morning. Gunatilaka, who was receiving treatment at the Kawata Base Hospital, was 98 at the time of his demise. Born on August 4, 1924 at Ampitiya, Kandy, Gunatilaka was a student of the Ampitiya Primary School, Sri Sangaraja Mahapirivana in Kandy, and the Institute of Indigenous Medicine. He later served as an assistant teacher at the Galpula Vidyalaya in Kuliyapitiya. In 1947, he became involved with Radio Ceylon through the Lama Pitiya program, while his comedy program called Vihlutalu on Radio Ceylon became a popular hit in 1954. In 1951, the movie Banda Nagareta Paminima starring Berti Gunatilaka was screened, while he later also acted in several more movies in a comedic role, including Pemmal Mala, Palamayata, Manamohini and Somi Boys. He gained widespread fame through his many comedic roles on the sketch comedy program Vinoda Samaya, alongside Annesley Dias and Samuel Rodrigo, that aired on national television for several years.
In your business news, the central bank reports that headline inflation for the month of February has risen to 15.1% from 14.2% in January. In addition, the report also places the country's gross official reserves provisionally estimated at $236 billion at the end of January 2022.
The central bank released its report of weekly economic highlights today. According to the report, year-on-year Colombo Consumer Price Index-based headline inflation increased to 15.1% in February 2022 from 14.2% in January due to the monthly increases of prices of items in both food and non-food categories. Further, year-on-year food inflation and non-food inflation were recorded at 25.7% and 10.1% respectively in February 2022. Furthermore, the Colombo Consumer Price Index increased to 7.9% in February from 6.9% in January. Meanwhile, during the period under review between the 26th of February to the 4th of March 2022, crude oil prices increased notably, with Western countries imposing new sanctions on Russia, which hampered the appetite for crude shipments from the country. However, prices showed some deceleration towards the end of the week on news of progress on nuclear talks between the United States and Iran. Overall, Brent and West Texas Intermediate prices increased by $9.26 per barrel and $12.95 per barrel respectively during the period. In the meantime, the weekly average weighted lending rate for the week ending on the 4th of March 2022 increased by 22 basis points to 9.21% compared to the previous week. Further, reserve money increased compared to the previous week, mainly due to the deposits held by commercial banks with the central bank. In addition, total outstanding market liquidity saw a deficit of 664.6 billion rupees by the end of this week, compared to a deficit of 673.9 billion rupees by the end of last week. On the external sector front, during the year up to the 4th of March, the Sri Lankan rupee depreciated against the US dollar by 0.6%. Given the cross-currency exchange rate movements, the Sri Lankan rupee depreciated against the Japanese yen by 0.3%, while appreciating against the euro by 1.9%, the Indian rupee by 1.4%, and the pound sterling by 0.6% during this period. In addition, gross official reserves were provisionally estimated at $2.36 billion as at end January 2022.
US payments firms Visa and MasterCard announced a suspension of operations in Russia in response to the invasion of Ukraine, which means that cards issued in Russia will no longer work outside of the country, and any cards issued outside of Russia will no longer work within the country. Western sanctions imposed on Russia have frozen much of the country's central bank's $640 billion in assets, barred several banks from the SWIFT system, and sent the ruble into free fall, erasing a third of its value this week. Meanwhile, Russia's largest bank has said that the move by Visa and MasterCard would not affect its card users in Russia. The bank said its customers would be able to withdraw, transfers, and pay in offline stores and Russian online stores as local transactions pass through its domestic national payment card system that does not depend on foreign payment systems. Russia has been taking steps to increase the independence of its financial system for years and has set up its own banking messaging system known as SPFS as an alternative to SWIFT, as well as its own card payment system, which began operating in 2015. Now, Russian forces have been amassing outside Ukraine's capital, Kiev, as of yesterday, evidently on the verge of an attack to take the city. In response, Ukrainian forces have been setting up defenses within the city. In the meantime, a third round of talks is set to take place tomorrow, according to Ukrainian forces.
The Russian Defense Ministry today released footage of what is said to be its airborne troops near Kiev. The ministry, however, did not specify when the footage was recorded. Meanwhile, Russia's invasion of Ukraine entered its 11th day as Ukrainian armed forces prepare for a possible Russian advance towards Kiev. In a video released by Ukraine's army, military personnel are seen building trenches, roadblocks and armed checkpoints on the roads leading to the capital, which have already been severely damaged during the conflict. Ukrainian police said there was relentless Russian shelling and air raids in the northeast Kharkiv region, reporting many casualties, while the UN World Health Organization said there had been several attacks on Ukrainian healthcare facilities. Moscow and Kiev had traded blame over Saturday's failed ceasefire to allow civilians to flee Mariupol and Volnovakha to southern cities besieged by Russian forces. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who launched what he calls a special military operation on the 24th of February, reiterated that he wanted a neutral Ukraine that had been demilitarized and denazified. He also likened Western sanctions to a declaration of war, adding, "Thank God it has not come to that." Meanwhile, Ukraine and Russia are set to hold the next round of peace talks tomorrow, David Arakamia, a member of the Ukrainian delegation, revealed yesterday. Russian President Vladimir Putin said in a telephone conversation with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Friday that Russia is open to dialogue with Ukraine, adding that he hoped Kiev would take a reasonable and constructive stance during the third round of talks. During their second round of peace talks last Thursday, Russian and Ukrainian negotiators agreed on the establishment of humanitarian corridors for the exit of civilians and on a temporary cessation of hostilities along the evacuation routes.
And that wraps up tonight's edition of your news on AdaDerana English. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.